And yeah, thanks again for giving us this opportunity to share a bit of our story and talk about some of our journey to date. Again, both Michel and I will be presenting today, and he'll jump in and out as we go through some slides here today. So just, I guess, for the people that aren't familiar with Kerr, just a bit of some background. We are a drywall subcontractor. We've been around for 40 plus years, so even longer than I've been doing this. We do load-bearing steel stud framing, exterior framing, insulation, taping, all different types of ceilings and specialty wall and acoustic products. I came to Kerr about 9 years ago now, and started in the office about 6 years ago. And it was then that I started sort of down this path with Lean. And as Val stated, yeah, the first Lean coffee was 2015. So that was a long time ago. So, you know, I think as a company, when I came, it was obvious to me that, you know, the team that had been assembled was phenomenal. Everyone had a very, very high level of accountability and a very high level of looking for ways to improve and to get better. You know, as a management group and an office group, we did work with a company that helped keep everyone accountable, you know, and pushed us, you know, to become lean and streamline process and procedure. And I think that's been a huge help for the company in whole. That being said, it was the field was a more difficult task looking forward. So that was going to be our biggest challenge, we thought. Again, you know, I was meant to be Kerr's Lean champion. It was a struggle at times being that person and finding the time to be that person. You know, the effort was a bit sporadic at times. You know, again, I think the office had a very high level of accountability and will and want to improve. You know, again, the field was the challenge. I think our trade, you know, generally speaking, is a very labor-intensive trade. It's a heavy lifting trade. You know, in the field, you know, there's always been a will and a want to find ways to do things easier. You know, guys go home at the end of the day and they're finished. So there was always a will and want to find ways. There were devices and tools and things available to make our job easier. You know, with that being said, there's always that look to find ways to do it better yet. You know, with those tools and processes that were used in the field, nobody called it lean. It wasn't lean. It was just, I got to find a way to do this easier, right? So the field, again, was in our mind the biggest opportunity to find ways to streamline our process and make things easier. Kerr has a very large group of dedicated field guys. I like to think we're a bit different than a lot of other trades in that we try really hard to maintain a set crew, you know, and still trying to grow that crew. But you know, we don't hire guys for jobs and then get rid of them. So there is a high level of commitment from our field staff to do a good job every day, be proud of what they do. You know, and a lot of our leadership group, again, you know, very high level, very dedicated people, but they all brought different means to an end. You know, and we didn't want to stifle that. We wanted to help make their jobs easier. Today, looking back, say at the last, 15 months or so, the lean processes that we have initiated and tried to roll out, we're getting some feedback that it's giving guys a greater sense of control on the job. There's more focus on the build throughout the entire team, not just at the leadership level. And it gave, everyone in the company, all the way down through the ranks, a bit of a voice, right? Which wasn't typical in our industry. Now we'll just look at some of the things we've been working on. Again, so we brought Michel on board in May of 2020. And, we wanted to have the opportunity to let someone look at our process and our procedures and our sites through a lean lens. I think it was really good getting a different perspective. As a project management group and a management group, we're looking at our work as, from the inside, right? And I think, to be fair, sometimes you didn't necessarily see what was there because it was just what we saw every day, all day long. So it was really good having, say, an outside viewpoint. I think, to be fair, Michel came in to help us out at Kerr and didn't really know what we did. So to start, we spent a lot of time visiting different sites, visiting different foreman group people, and getting an understanding of what it is we do day in and day out. With that, I'll say during the first few months, it became obvious, I'll say, to, in Michel's reviews, that there were, say, 3 very typical wastes that we're seeing on every job site. The material placement is always a key. We struggle at times just because of restrictions on sites to put it where we want to put it. We end up rehandling garbage all too often because of the inability to get it out of the building. We did start up a little campaign recently of, no garbage hits the floor, where we purchased a whole bunch more garbage containers and garbage bins in an effort to, put it in once and get rid of it once rather than rehandling. We didn't have, say, a really standard setup to start our work. It was basically left to the site level, to the foreman level, to set themselves up and get the job done. And to be fair, they were very good at what they did, and we had a lot of trust in them and let them do it. But we didn't have a standardization for starting the work. And again, one of the biggest wastes that was seen was just traveling. Guys looking for the foreman, guys looking for equipment, guys looking for tools and supplies. And, I don't know how many miles, when you got 120 people, how many miles a day are traveled that, unnecessarily, right?
Just like the waste that Ian's been sharing, we also found that we're missing some of the key lean components, like the daily huddle. The huddle is, a place where you create the opportunity to build culture, and it's a venue where you create team learning, and it's a place that you begin to share leadership. We're not talking about, as a team, we found that we weren't talking about constraints, and we really had, we were operating in weeks rather than days or hours, which is ultimately where you want to be. The other thing that we were missing in terms of lean components was the 5S for field supplies. Our team was always looking for supplies and materials. It didn't matter which site I looked at. We were always looking for something. Losing supplies and tools is directly proportional to searching. And if you increase your searching, you're increasing your waste. So really, we need to start to look at how do we move supplies closer to the point of use. And that's tough to do when you're moving around a construction site and bouncing around with the schedule. Some of the last thing that was we were missing from a lean component was having some standard setups. A great example is I went to 2 different sites early on, and I observed 3 cutting stations that were doing the exact same job. And what I found is each one were set up significantly different. Typically, we didn't have tools at hand. If you have a standard setup, you can make everything within reach. And what we found is we were looking for stuff. Then again, we would take the scrap after we cut off. Instead, we pick it up and throw it on the floor instead of picking it up and throwing it in the garbage container. So it was just about organizing and getting set up. So we're trying to save a lot of time on the front end, and we end up adding work throughout the middle of the process. So that was kind of the challenges with some of that. And we really had no strategy for how we located our materials. Generally, we'd bring the materials, we'd set them down in the available space. And then what would happen is we'd move our saws in, set it up, and then you really need to think about, do I have an input? How does it come into my saw? Then how does it come out of my saw and get used in construction right away, not have to be moved several times throughout there? So what we were finding is that this waste and the missing lean components were pretty consistent across every site that we looked at out in the field.
Yeah, so with the daily huddle, this was an area that we thought had big potential to help. In my mind, I think at the end of the day, it was trying to find a way to help our foreman group feel less pressured. And we started sort of a revision 0 at a couple of sites, trying to work through it. We had the foremen were directly involved in what this daily huddle would look like. And we started trialing it. We got input from, not just the foreman group, but the site guys. They were part of trialing these early morning huddles. And the morning huddles, they talk about, what people's tasks are, what the duration of tasks are, what constraints are, in front of us. Guys were committing to this instead of being told what they should be doing. They had that input. And there was shared learning. It was also to kick off the day, a portion of it was the safety component, right? And it was visual. It was in front of the guys, so everyone could see. I know for me, when I see something, I remember it, I retain it, right? And I think that's pretty typical with people.
These are some of the pictures of our Rev Zero, of our huddle and the boards at the school. What's interesting is this school project was a fairly successful Lean IPD project. And what's interesting about that project is that Clark was the general, and they've been invited Kerr to be part of the presentation at the Lean Construction Conference in Arizona this October. So if you happen to be down there, please make sure you take the time to visit us and take a look at it. The daily huddle is foundational to the Lean enterprise. What we're trying to achieve with the daily huddle is to ensure that the team understands today's work and that we are connecting the worker's day to our weekly work plan. What we want to see is to set a system that adjusts for the constraints that we see throughout the day, and we want to make it visual so that when the team looks up at that board, they can see their work, they can see what's coming, they can see where they're going next, and they can help the foreman to come up or to see the things that are in their way. At the end of the day, it's really about creating a visual system that we can set and prioritize our work with. When you start to combine the huddle with lean leadership, you improve the overall sense of team at the site. And then at the same time, you can raise the bar on accountability and performance, because what you're doing is you're talking about it every day. And if you never talk about performance, if you only beat people up in the field and you don't talk about how you improve, it's really tough for people to get better. So at the end of the day, it's about visibility and improving communication. And that's the key with the daily huddle. What's unfortunate is that there seems to be a mystery around how to use the huddle as a tool. And that's one of the things that we did at Kerr, is we kind of unraveled that a bit and started to learn how the individuals are working on site, how they're thinking, how we leverage that as moving forward.
Yeah, I'm gonna just jump in too. I think, I think one of the biggest hurdles we see as a subcontractor is we don't always dictate our flow. We get roadblocks chucked at us all day long. And I think the daily huddle, is foundational to having flow on a job site. And if we could have flow on a job site 100% of the time, we could do jobs with less people and get them done a lot quicker and more efficiently. But I don't think that's realistic, but it helps us in that direction. And just a bit of a props, I think, with that Lean conference thing in Arizona, while we're on that topic, is we were actually part of that group, and that job was chosen for the inaugural Lean in Design Award from the Lean Construction Institute. So,
nice.
High five to everyone involved with that. We found out last night. So, yeah, that was very exciting to hear. So the daily huddle, this is, I guess, more what our huddle looks like, I'll say, today. So again, it's having the entire site team sitting down, looking at the huddle board. They have their input in the huddle board. We use a markable site map. So we'll just print off a large, either of the full site plan or sections of the site, cover them with plexiglass, and then the guys can use, markers to mark it up. Again, it gives the guys on site a visual of the work area, helps connect them to the job site. And then the production board, of course, which, describes the tasks, describes the durations, the locations, what the next task is. And to me, that's one of the most important portions, because guys weren't always, historically, they didn't know what was next, right? So setting out a task after the task they're doing is important. We also created a mini huddle form on our software that the guys can actually use on smaller sites, if there's 1 or 2 or 3 guys kind of thing. And it allows them, without having a site trailer, say, or the ability to put up these huddle boards, to still go through the process. Where was I? Sorry. And the field staff. So with the guys using this on a daily basis, this is the way they're being trained on the use of this tool. Some of the benefit that we're seeing is the foreman doesn't have to remember so much during the day. We're able to adjust on the fly better as a group when we face hurdles. Everyone's getting a voice, and the expectations are set out, very clearly at the start of the day, and the commitment to the tasks. We're seeing a very high level of commitment from the field staff. With that, and this kind of push in the field, something else we also did is we started sending out little video clips of improvements, YouTube clips and things like that. And they came from, construction and manufacturing and office settings, just to help give our group an understanding of what an improvement could look like. And sometimes it is the smallest little thing, right? I think guys had a sense that they were, we were expecting some monumental improvement that was going to alter our trade, but we wanted to be clear to them that it was just the small little things on a day in and day out basis that can make the difference, right? We also created a Lean's Win channel in our internal teams in SharePoint, and asked people to share wins, share pictures, and share the little wins that they had, and we celebrated those wins, right? It's always nice to get the thumbs up when you post something, and it makes guys feel better. In our quarterly newsletter, we've also tried to make it a point of providing lean updates and providing maybe any tips and tricks that we can use. I guess the issue that we did see was we had some buy-in from some very energetic people and guys that were really excited about this. But it was a small percentage. The big uptick was that we were getting some, right? And that was the win. Yeah, these are just a few of the pictures that I guess had been posted and some of the ideas. The one on the top left is one of our fellas made a quiver to put his ceiling hangers in, kind of like Robin Hood. So as he was going through the site and putting in hangers, he'd just pull them out and onto the next one. And again, it's small, but it saves that bending down to pick one up each time or twisting or whatever. So the one below that is just a cart that one of the guys on site made for all our fasteners, and it's on wheels and it can be moved around to where the work's happening, right? So guys aren't traveling back and forth to job boxes. The top one above the wording there is one of our fastening guns, and they use a strip of screws so you can pound in screws without feeding by hand the gun. We tried creating some kits at one point for our different, whether it was framing or drywalling, that had the appropriate items in it that were required. And we did trial them on some different sites. And then just some different carts, that were made, to help, again, just move the tools and equipment to the place of work. We also trialed some taper carts, which were mini baker scaffold that we distributed to all our tapers. And again, it's an effort to, first thing in the morning, they can load up everything they need onto a cart, and it gets pushed to where they're working, and just to help save that travel time. Again, I think, as a company, we saw some good progress in some of these areas. There was an understanding, that what we wanted to do and how we wanted to move forward, and it was beginning to feel a bit more comfortable to some. And again, it was a buy-in. We had great buy-in from some guys, but it was still trying to push it down through across the company continued to be a bit of a challenge at times. With that, as we started to get busier and busier, and again, it's not always a rosy picture. Lean's a challenge, right? We started getting some pretty strong feedback from some of our site people. I think, as the PMs, I think we probably heard most of it, and I heard a pile of it. you know, so four of the biggest ones was that we don't have time for this, right? The work is different at every site. So what we did at this site, you know, it's not the same. It's how can this, you can't have a standard process because the work at every site's different. You know, we had some guys that were very involved, very excited about it, I'll say, and other guys that honestly, it was just, I don't want to talk to you about this kind of thing. And then another challenge we saw was that, you know, we trialed this on some sites and had it set up on a site. And then when that, say, foreman or his group of guys moved to the next site, it was left at the previous site. It didn't move on from site to site. So again, yeah, we don't have time. So I received all sorts of phone calls that in our leadership's mind, this was adding more to their plate. They didn't see it as an opportunity to help them at first. And it was just, I don't have time for this. You know, you're asking me to do more now than I'm already doing. And I'll say it, you know, it's that long game, right? It takes time for them to see that by slowing down a little bit, right? How it'll help them in the long run.
Yeah, and I guess the key here is that we didn't slow down at this point and back off. What we did is we found those few individuals out in the work floor that were interested and seemed a little bit, you know, wanted to learn more, and we invited them to the table to start to work on some of these, you know, these long-standing challenges that we have seen that were out there, and kind of created teams and then shared that with the rest of the group.
Yeah, another one that we heard, I say quite often, is the work is different at each site. So how can we have a standard process, right? You know, and I think, you know, looking at it, you know, one of the biggest things that does happen is the schedule and the schedule change, right? There was a level of frustration from some of our leadership group on, you know, as we got busier and busier, I think our manpower became somewhat diluted. So, you know, their concern was, you know, how are these guys that, you know, we don't know and we've never seen before, how are they going to contribute, right? Particularly, you know, say with the Huddle boards. And, you know, I can't do on this site what I did on the last site because it's so different. You know, the GC was engaged on the last site, and on this site, you know, they don't even know what Lean is, you know, and we've seen that, right? What's Lean? We've heard that from GCs. So with that, we looked at, I guess, what does Kerr do? What's our value stream? What's our product family matrix? So, you know, I'll say, generally speaking, we frame exterior steel studs, we frame interior steel walls, we drywall them with, you know, different products. We mud and tape walls and ceilings, and we build ceilings and hang acoustic products. That's what we do, and that's what we do on every single job we do. So there isn't really a difference in what we do. The differences are where we do them and what the conditions are where we do them.
Yeah, and when we got that team together and started kind of putting the work together and looking at it, and literally going out to the work floor and saying, well, how is this different over on this side of the building versus that side of the building? And they started to piece that together and started to buy in some more. You know, I think sometimes the first complaint is just a pushback, and that helps us to come back and you know, work on, you know, some better knowledge.
Yeah, and one of the other things is, again, it was, you know, we had some sites where it was really easy to talk to the guys about it and work through it and problem solve because they were engaged. And we had other sites where, you know, again, the guys just didn't want to talk about it, and they put up a wall, and it was, you know, it was challenging to get through that wall. We had sporadic use of some of these tools that we put in place, and not a lot of really good buy-in across the board. It was bits and pieces here and there. Our leaders have a very, very different approaches to getting a job done, and how they do that, and what their management style is like. And we didn't want to suppress that, because the group we do have all been very successful. We just wanted them to see that this would help them to that end, and try and make their lives a little easier. I think a lot of the guys took on everything and then dictated how the job was supposed to go, rather than sharing that with their site crew. And I think, as we went through, and guys chit chat and they send texts back and forth, I think it became a little more sort of standard and expected, and it was acceptable to more of the guys, and we started seeing maybe a little less resistance. And then the last was, the lean didn't move from site to site. So, with one of our first trials at a project we did in Leduc, everything was set up. It was trialed. It was run very, I'll say, successfully on that site. And when that site leadership team moved to the next site, those tools and things didn't move with them, and that's, again, I'll stand up and, that's my fault, or our fault, that we didn't yet have, say, a process in place. We had processes for job startups and expectations and what was needed on a site. And to be honest, we weren't quite ready to include all these lean tools as part of that startup process.
So ultimately, we found that we had some gaps in our understanding across our foreman group. So we're not experiencing a consistent approach to how the sites were being run by the generals. So some of the sites were lean, and some of them were more traditional construction. Our foremen were not necessarily seeing anyone else talking lean on the site. They did not seem to understand how they fit into the overall lean picture. They were doing the pull planning, but they weren't really seeing that it made a difference. They attended the daily huddle. That's the site level daily huddle, but did not understand their overall role in that meeting, and how they need to kind of behave, and how that needs to be utilized. They really did not know how to leverage their own huddle to increase productivity, improve quality, or to kind of build the lean culture. That's all stuff that was a little bit foreign to them, that they weren't sure about. We also had some gaps in the overall foreman's ability around supervision and lean leadership. Lean leadership means that you share leadership, you get people involved, you ask their opinion, you bring those, you kind of get the group together and make decisions. Some of our foremen just thought it was their job to be the, know it all and be able to do it all on behalf of the rest of the group. So in our foreman, so what we did is essentially this is the why for the lack of uptake in what we thought we'd hoped we'd get in their early trials, is we just had some gaps that we had to fill. So what we did is we decided that we would do some foreman training. And in the foreman training, we focused on providing a lean construction overview. Got some supervisory best practices in place, and then we used an iterative approach to build the daily huddle, while we used the visual tools to engage the team. And then while sharing the lean best practices, as we kind of were going through that. So again, it was every week we're growing a little bit throughout the program. The other key thing that we did is as part of our training component, we incorporated the Lean Builder book review as part of our program. And what this did, as soon as we added it in, is the foreman could immediately see their fit in the lean construction. They were really challenged because what they were seeing in their real life is completely different than what lean construction was about. So this gave them a great picture on how that all came together. It also allowed us to kind of normalize the learning across the team, because when you read books and then you share kind of what stands out to you, you talk about what's important to me and what's important to you, and you see things differently, and kind of that balances that whole team, which is really the benefit of the shared learning. So the other part of the program is we ensured that we slowed down the learning rather than having it really come in and one day get all the training done and out the door. And we could have done that. Instead, what we did is we spread it out over 5 weeks so that we could understand the material while we used that iterative approach to set up and build the process. So first we kicked off the huddle, then we would set up the visual boards, and then we would begin to look at waste, and kind of week to week we'd continue to grow that. And then at the end we would then talk about waste, and then learn how to talk about it in the daily huddle. All the while we kept on coaching the foremen and helping them to be more collaborative in their approach to leading. So that's kind of the overview of how we built the program.
Yeah, I think just to touch base with that particular book for those builders out there, highly recommended. It's very relevant and really explains very simply some of those tools that they use in the book. Anyway, with that training, after our first, say, group went through it, we saw the team as a whole was becoming more proactive. I think we've, as a trade, and our trade has historically been our trade has been used historically to push jobs. We have that ability just at the front end of a lot of the construction. But I think with this training, the whole team has become more proactive and just helping to push this along. Our morning huddles, historically it's been a dictatorship where the foreman is saying, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, and that's it. Whereas now, getting, 3/4 of the team is doing the talking, and they're setting their expectations for the day or for the morning. And the foreman's doing, just 1/4 of the talking. We're seeing about a 90 to 100% accomplishment of the commitments that were stated. And when we do our little morning huddle, there's different ways. We've had some, green dots and red dots. We use little smiley faces on one of the jobs to show that guys have, done what they've said they will do. And we're also seeing guys volunteer for more work, or they're volunteering to complete an item that's in their work area that, normally, again, it was never discussed, right? And they're helping the leader on the job take some of that away from himself, right? That he doesn't have to think about it. These are some pictures from, I guess, a couple of our different sites, showing me, the huddle board, some of the pictures and prints that were printed off so they can actually point and discuss a specific work area. Some of the comments that we've seen more recently from some of the team is everyone's being more proactive now, more commitment to the job throughout the project team. everyone is looking at what's coming next, not just the foreman, right? Guys would go into a task, and in a lot of cases, they didn't know what was next, right? Now they know what's next. And you got constraints are becoming way more visible on a job site because everyone's looking for them now, and they're discussing it in the morning before we start work. A lot more accountability through the project team. Again, guys willing to take on more than they normally would rather than just being told what to do. They're engaged in that flow. And we got guys, coming to sites in the morning now, and they're looking at the Huddle board, and, rather than sitting at their table looking at their phone, they're actually looking at the board to see, what their day looks like before they even do the Huddle. And there's way less time chasing after the foreman. We had one of our very, very long-term foremen saying his phone rings way less now than it used to. Because that's what guys would do. They'd finish a task, and maybe they finish early, which is great, but they didn't know what was next, so they'd phone him, right? So he's just getting way less phone calls, which helps him do his job better. The door to the site trailer's opening a lot less often, right? And getting interrupted. And one of the biggest things I think is the workers are staying on task, and they're interrupted less often during the day because they know what to do next. They know where to go next. And it keeps guys on task, which is, ultimately what we like to see. And I guess, just kind of going back to, some of the office too, something else we started doing was we did a little mini A3 template that we've created on our software system and in SharePoint, and we've asked everyone, field and office, to use it to share little wins, right? Describe what it looks like, describe what the time savings looked like, and share that with the group. And we also, as a management group, we did all read this book as well. And then we did sort of a little book club thing over a period of, I'm going to say 3 or 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And discussed it as a management group, say. And I don't know, I thought it was really quite good. And I think some of the feedback I got from the rest of the bunch was that it went really well. And then we had an understanding for the basis of the training that was happening in the field. So that was really good. I think, I'll say some of the things we have tried, the little mini A3, to be honest, I think there's some value there, but we've struggled utilizing it. And it is hard sometimes to slow down and find ways to improve, right? It's difficult. So kind of the next steps, to end this fantastic presentation. We're going to continue with some of our supervisor training in the field. Continue, with some more lean learning in the office and the field. We want to do better at our project startup to include these lean tools and items. We definitely need to improve our A3 process and utilization. I think it's difficult sometimes to stop and think about it, right? We've been, as an industry, and I think as an office group, we're so busy and we're so focused on banging out our daily tasks, right? And it's hard to slow down sometimes. And something else that, we want to do in the field with the Huddle boards is start, we used to work in days of work or a week of work, and we've tried to reduce that to a day of work, right? What's next? And we'd like to try and even reduce that further, where guys are talking about their task for the morning sort of thing, right? Or what am I doing between, coffee and lunch, and break it down into little batches, right? And it is hard work. It's tough, right? I mean, I'm a person that thrives in, I do very well reacting and getting things done and bang, bang, bang. And sometimes it's hard to kind of sit back and maybe put your feet on your desk and take some deep breaths and think about your process and what you could do to make it better, right? And I think just on a last note, if I present again, it's going to have to be at Lean Whiskey, because this Lean coffee is, I could have used a little shot this morning.
Well done, Ian.
Thank you. I'm done. I'm finished.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.